Welcome to EventNewsDXB. Before we begin, I've got a quick favour to ask. There's one simple way that you can support our show, and that's by hitting that follow or subscribe button on the app you're listening to the show on right now. It really does make a huge difference in helping us get the show out there to as many people as possible. So please give us a hand and click that button now. Thanks.
EventNewsDXB.
You're listening to the EventNewsDXB podcast, your behind-the-scenes look into the world of events in Dubai, the UAE and the MENA region. I'm Ian Carless, and every week I dive into the latest event news, expert insights and industry trends while spotlighting Dubai's most inspiring success stories from the people shaping one of the world's most dynamic event markets. Our guest this week needs almost no introduction. After relocating to Dubai at an early age from her hometown of Newcastle, Maxine English has been a prominent figure from the very outset of Dubai's once fledgling event scene, with stints at the now sorely missed Savoy Theatre, as well as Flash Entertainment, Ducktac and the QE2. 3 years ago, she was offered what is probably her dream role as the GM of the Savoy Theatre in London's West End. And to prove that we go all out for EventNewsDXB, I took a plane, train and automobile to talk to Maxine backstage at the iconic Savoy Theatre. Maxine, welcome to the podcast.
Excited?
Yes. Now, I guess I should really start at the beginning, since that's what I've done with all, I guess, so far.
Yeah.
How did you end up in Dubai? I know you're not there now. I know you're and actually, for those listening, we are actually having one of those rare occurrences where we're recording a podcast in person. I'm in London. I'm in the Savoy Theatre with Maxine, where she's been for the past 3 years. But as I said, let's circle back to the beginning. You spent a lot of your time in Dubai. How did you end up in Dubai?
A long time ago in the north, in Newcastle, my father hopped on a plane to go and do 2 months of consulting in Dubai. And we waved him off and said, we'll see you in 2 months. And then 2 months later, he rang and said, you're probably going to have to come here because I'm a bit busy. And that was that. Mum and I got on a plane, left my brother behind in London, and off we went to Dubai. And then Peter joined us a year later and the whole family was there. And we never looked back. So when I left to come here, I'd been in Dubai for the best part of 26 years at that point.
Wow. And like most of us, I guess, you've seen a lot of change.
Yeah. You know, when I landed, we did the obligatory must stay in the World Trade Center apartments. We stayed in all three at some point over the next couple of years. But at that point, Sheikh Zayed Road was one road. There was nothing else there. It was just that. And you had to drive really far to go to a Spinneys. And if you went to the Hard Rock Cafe, you were very, very, very far away.
So how did you get into entertainment then? Because that's where you spent predominantly the bulk of your career.
Yes, I mean, it's always the same story, isn't it? Annoying 4-year-old who wants to be famous and is sent off to drama class, and then summer sent off to drama school, summer school, circus school, singing school, acting school, and always just loved the arts. And same thing, you know, in Dubai, through school, acting, and then acting at A level. And actually the kind of the understanding of how it happens. So for me, that was the real joy. And I always wanted to, not always just wanted to perform. I wanted to understand how we got to that performance. So, you know, the school play was me being stage manager and director and operations and set building rather than wanting to be actually on the stage. And then it was, you know, a side hustle as a radio presenter when I was still at school. And then it was into theatre. And it's just always been theatre, and it's always been big events. It's always been the putting together of something, that kind of jigsaw piece that allows the end bit to happen. Because what everybody sees on the stage or, you know, wherever you are in the event, there's been a lot that's gone before to get there. And that's the bit that interests me was, how do we get here? What has to happen for us to enjoy this moment?
What was your first break then? What was it that got you sort of over the line and into the industry, would you say, where you felt like, okay, I'm a bona fide part of this industry now? What was your first major sort of role?
I'd been doing bits and bobs, you know, radio presenting, events, etc., etc. And there was this wonderful man called Michael Voigt who worked at Jumeirah. And when I was at school, we'd done this huge school play. And I decided that it was so good that it shouldn't just stay at Dubai College. So I toddled off down to Jumeirah Beach Hotel and said, can I borrow your theatre? You know, the one in there. And this wonderful man called Michael sat and heard me out and saw the business plan. And I was like, I don't have any money, but if you give it to me for free, you can have the F&B. I'll take the tickets. It'll be great. Yeah. And we tried really hard to make it happen, but it never did. 5 years later, I see Michael again, and he said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Oh, looking for a job, not really sure what I'm still doing the radio, etc., etc." And he said, "Come and see me tomorrow." And I walked into the Madinat, and he walked me into what was the Madinat the MPV, and then over to the souk and showed me the theatre and said, "This man, Andy McLeod, who you will know, everyone will know Andy McLeod, is looking for a coordinator to help run this theatre." And that was that. That man just took a chance. And he went, "Yep, you're in." And that was the beginning. That was my first big theatre job, was that wonderful Madinat Theatre, which will always remain in my heart.
How much of that was a baptism of fire?
A lot of it, I think. But I think in terms of theatre, everybody's like, "Oh, it's so, how on earth does it all happen?" And I think it's the same with big live events, whether you're doing, the Formula One or whether you're doing a theatre show. It's the common sense of it all. It's that has to go here to go here to go here. We say it here a lot that it's 80% business and 20% sparkles, theatre dust. But that's theatre in Dubai back then was, we were educating a city as well who hadn't had much theatre before then. It's certainly not West End levels of theatre, certainly not box offices and tickets and turning up on time and latecomers and that kind of thing. So in that aspect, doing what was happening on stage, I remember, opening with Abigail's Party, and people, the expatriate community was like, "This is brilliant. This is just what we needed." And then there was another section of, of our wonderful nation that went, "What is this? What is happening? What are you all doing?" And watching kind of theatre evolve from then, as a 20-odd-year-old, and then watching it evolve and other things happen across the city was quite something. But yeah, baptism of fire, trying to, even just things like ticketing systems that didn't sit well within the theatre world, and then switching from the theatre across to the arena where we were working with big names like Peppermint back then, and putting on these huge great big shows in there, and these nightclubs, and then the film festivals, and it just grew so rapidly because the infrastructure had been put in place.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of people that would say making theatre commercially viable anywhere in the world is a tough ask. How difficult of a task is that in Dubai?
I don't know how difficult it will always be, if that makes sense, because
it'll never be easy.
I don't think it will ever be easy, because you are ranging from, things that go on at the Dubai Opera, like the big stuff like Les Mis, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, that kind of stuff. To put on something of that size and quality is not cheap. It's expensive. And then what happens is that those tickets become expensive because also it's not a long run. It's not the West End. It's not here. You can't sit that down for 4 months and hope to recoup. That's the very difficult commercial side of things, is that then it feels elite. You're looking at a 600 dirham ticket for something but then the question mark to that is, you look at what we charge here, which is, an average ticket price of around £100. And that has had to fly from here to the Middle East to be put on. Then you look at some of the smaller scale stuff, and we're not yet, there is a lot happening, but we're not yet at the place where you can fly out 10 principals and surround it with a cast from the Middle East, which is what happens on, in other areas. So it is bringing the entire thing with you. Commercially, I think it will always be hard. Theatre's a hard industry to make a lot of revenue. You'll have seen that from some of the notices this year with, all the biggies like Cameron McIntosh and Lloyd Webber. We're coming to the end of a financial year, and that, they're all producing their results, and it's hard. Theatre's always going to be hard, and I think unless you're incredibly passionate about the theatre as an industry, it's not your, we'll just get involved in that because I'm going to make a load of money. It's really, I don't think it's ever going to be easy.
Do you think there could be an expectation in the same way that, for example, some of the other entertainment sectors, when, certainly when they were getting started, you had Flash, which I know you're involved with, and some of the other ones, where I think it was accepted that there was going to be a certain level of governmental support, and that was going to be, in the form of, a marketing budget or however they wanted to account for it. Do you think that's perhaps the only way to keep theatre sustainable in a small market like Dubai? Because admittedly, there is only 9 million people. And whilst the demographics can be a plus, they can also be a con because, you've obviously got, not a lot of people in the first place. And then of that demographic, only a very small percentage who actually like theatre. Yep. And then we all come from different nationalities, don't we? So it's not everybody's cup of tea. So I guess there's two questions there, which is, do you think there will always need to be a level of some kind of support? And then also, how difficult does the demographics make for someone programming the shows that are going on?
Yeah, I think actually the way to look at it is how Flash did look at it, which, is very much the model that has been used not just in theatre, in terms of things like the World Cup, the horse racing, is that, yes, originally there has to be that get up off the ground support, whether, that is a marketing budget, it comes from Dubai Tourism, it comes from Abu Dhabi Tourism to promote their city. Yeah. But the theory is that eventually it will stand on its own 2 feet like a toddler. So, we help it up, we get it moving, and then you're on your own because you have to make this work, which is exactly how it all has worked. There's a very famous interview with Sheikh Mohammed where he talks about that the first Dubai World Cup was invited, paid for, etc., etc. Now that is one of the biggest money generating things in the world. That there's no subsidy there anymore because people want to be a part of it. And I think that always has to be the theory with theatre, is that, yes, it's going to need a little help in hand to get up and off the ground. But I do believe that cultural vision for Dubai is that it becomes, that hub of culture. Dubai Opera, Coca-Cola Arena, the Palladium, which I know has been renamed, but the new Mall of the Emirates Theatre, the Zabeel Theatre. There's a thriving community now that did not exist 15 years ago. So in terms of it working, it does. You can see it. It's growing and it's developing. And I think it's things that like Lisa and Johnny are doing with DPE. I've had two boys on my stage in the West End that came from Dubai and performing arts schools in Dubai. So you're starting to see that expand, and that's only going to get bigger as, Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Ras Al Khaimah and the wider UAE gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Ras Al Khaimah is growing at a rate, with all of the new things that are happening down there. And I think from a demographics point of view, I think it's just that you have to know who you are. You have to know who your audience is in your venue. And I think that's the thing, rather than looking at it as a wider thing. Dubai Opera knows who their audience is, and that's who they are. That's who they have to program for. You have to program for that audience. During my time at the QE2, we knew what the QE2 was and who our audience was and what they wanted. They didn't want new and modern. They wanted to step onto the QE2 and feel that, as if they were nostalgia. On board. Yeah, as if they were on board back then, that lovely end of pier, we're going to do some tributes, we're going to do a supper club. This is what it would have been like back then. We're all going to get dressed up and have a nice time. And I think that's what each individual venue has to know. It has to know what it is. Is it a hiring venue? Is it a theatre venue? Is it, who are we talking to? And then talk to them. Because I find that theatre is about, and events is about trust. And I found that on the QE2 a lot, was that the audiences that came began to trust in the programming, and then they would go to something they might not necessarily have gone to before because they trust the quality and what they're seeing. So, and I think that's the same with any venue. With Dubai Opera, they're going to trust that what they go and see is a huge, great, big, fantastic West End spectacular. And so they will pay a little bit more for that, and they will go and see a wonderful orchestra, or, and I think you have to play to your strength of knowing who your audience is. And in Dubai, that's quite wide. Now,
you mentioned Ras Al Khaimah. Obviously the association there now and the rumour mill is casinos, et cetera, et cetera. If we look at casinos elsewhere around the world, Vegas, Macau, obviously there's a huge amount of entertainment that goes alongside the whole gambling aspect. Yeah. Do you think that will play into developing, the entertainment scene, certainly the theatre scene and the more theatrical shows that we can expect to see in the region?
Absolutely. You only have to look at the big shows that land in Las Vegas, and that it's every night and everybody wants to go and do a residency there, and that's just in and amongst everything else that's happening. So you've got again, it's the two versions, isn't it? You've got the day-to-day, this is happening every day, this is happening every night. We've got roaming performers, there's Cirque du Soleil happening. And as we know, this is the UAE, that it's not going to be, we've got a couple of acrobats in. It will be, we've had Franco Dragone in. He's written an entire show just specifically for this casino, because that's who they are, Yeah. When they brought Franco in to do Cavalier and Mother of the Nation and all of these amazing shows that he put together for them, that's the UAE, right? So yes, you're going to see that. You're going to see resident shows land. And I think it's always the way, isn't it? Whoever does it biggest and best, the UAE's like, not literally, but hold my beer. Watch me. You think that's good? Watch this. And I think we'll see a lot of that. I think especially with, the upcoming areas like Blue Water and things like that, we're going to see huge amounts of entertainment that land. Obviously, the rise of Saudi and the tourism there is something that means that whilst we're all a wonderful, friendly bunch, there's competition there as well. So there's going to be that element of it. We saw that with Expo, the entertainment that was driven during Expo in that dome. I was very honoured to work on the Sami Yusuf concert in that dome. And what went into that and what we saw of all of the concerts and shows that were put on there and the roaming performers and the entertainment on a daily basis was phenomenal. And that was just for a one-off. So if we saw that for Expo, you can imagine what we're going to see when these huge resorts open. And I do think that there will be that kind of, look at Atlantis, the Royal, with what they did and how they opened and how they will continue to. So I do think we're just going to see more and more and more of it on a huge scale.
And speaking of big shows, just rewinding a little bit to the early part of your career, you were involved quite heavily with bringing Robbie Williams to Dubai in the beginning, weren't you?
Robbie.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come about?
Oh, Ian, that man. We both know.
I think there's a few women that say that.
Well, I tell you, there was this madcap idea that a Robbie Williams show would be put on, and a really wonderful friend of mine and yours, Damien Calderbank, rang me up and said, do you want to give me a hand? And I said yes, and I really shouldn't have. But it was amazing, and we did that with some of the greatest people of all time, and we went up to a golf course and said, can we take one of your tees and can we use the front race course for standing, and can we build a giant and we flew in a roof from Italy, and we did some very, very wild things, and it was incredible. And I will never forget the morning that the tickets went on sale and me getting a call at like 5 a.m. from Mercato, from the manager, being like, we've got a bit of a problem. And I was like, please don't have a bit of a problem. We're not here. We're not now. We're about to try and sell 25,000 tickets, and we really have to sell 25,000 tickets or we're in trouble. And they sent me a picture, and there were queues down the street, and it was like nothing Dubai had ever seen before. And that reminded me of my youth, queuing up for take that tickets, at 5 o'clock in the morning. And they were ringing. He said, we're ringing the gang from Starbucks to try and get them in early because we've never seen this many people before. And it was sold out so fast, and we just couldn't believe it. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And we then had all the boxes in the grandstand. And so we sold all of these private boxes and corporate hospitality. And Chris from the golf club had taken, again, a chance on a
huge leap, yes.
A kind of wild idea, it was a bit Maverick, really. And it was one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed. And it was a front news of every paper. It was everywhere. But again, that was the leap, right? Because we'd gone from the rugby club, where we had amazing things like Spandau Ballet and Go West and all of these really great concerts that were absolutely incredible and absolutely what everybody wanted. And Dubai was getting bigger, and there was younger people there, and all of a sudden there's Robbie Williams, and there's 27,000 people standing on a golf/race course watching him. And it was watching a teeny little bit of history be made, and it was quite something. I remember standing in the grandstand and Sheikh Mohammed arriving and me being like, why is he here? What is happening? And they were like, well, because we'd taken Robbie to play football at his palace the day before. It was quite wild. And he had then gone, well, who is this guy? And so there was this whole brilliant meeting where he had no idea who he was. He had no idea who he was. And then he turned up to watch the show and all hell broke loose and it was magic. And I think that's one of the reasons that we all do it in the event world and the theatre world is because it's a bit wild.
Now, and you're no stranger to rock royalty, are you? You've got a little bit of rock royalty in the family, haven't you?
A little bit of rock royalty in the family.
Tell us a little bit, a sneak peek there.
Sneak peek. Yeah, there's a whole Brian Johnson thing.
For anybody who has been under a rock for the last 25 or 30 years, we are, of course, referring to Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
Yes, sorry.
Just in case.
Uncle Brian.
Uncle Brian.
I forget. I'm like, yeah, everybody knows him. But it's quite funny, actually, because most of the kids in this building have never heard of AC/DC. It's absolutely wild.
Well, most of the kids have never heard of MTV.
True. Yeah, I haven't managed to get him in here yet, into the Savoy, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, he's going out on tour again.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is going out on tour again.
How's his hearing?
This is good. He's doing really, really well. This is the third final tour. As ever. I'm not doing it again.
They're allowed to.
I'm not doing it again, Max. I'm done. Oh, okay. Enjoy the next one. I think, but again, you know, that touring, it's in the bones, isn't it? You go, oh, I'm not doing this again. And then you're like, go on. I'll do it one more time. But yeah, Brian, part of the family. So.
And you've got some wonderful little anecdotes. I know you've told me in the past where he's just called you up and, you know, wished you for your wedding or something, wasn't it? Yeah. He couldn't make your wedding, is that right?
No, he couldn't make the wedding. And there's a couple of really brilliant photos of me because my family were brilliant and Mum had spoken to him to get him to do this video and he was touring recording the rock and roll documentary that he was doing, Rock and Rollers. It was part of the book. And he's chatting away about how he couldn't be there and he hopes we're having a great day. And then the entire cast of the rock and roll documentary join in to say, like, happy wedding. And I'm like, who are all these people? I'm absolutely here for this. And then following that was this huge video of Michael Ball, who is the greatest love of my life after my husband, before. And we just done Michael Does the Musicals in Abu Dhabi with him.
Yeah.
And I'm a big stickler for, like, people not going, oh, you remember Maxine? Could you do me a favour? And when he came up on the screen, I just looked at my mother as like, what have you done? What have you done? And he goes, okay, Maxine, I guess you're getting married today. And I'm not invited. And I was like, what is happening? And he says, it's a brilliant video. And he looks furious. And I thought, they've made him do this and he's raging and I'm never going to get to work with him again because he's furious. And he goes, well, in Abu Dhabi, I thought it was me and you. And then falls about laughing. And I was like, oh, my word. So, yeah, even my wedding was not free from theatre and music and chaos because that's who we are.
So let's fast forward. I know your last gig, I think, in Dubai was your own company that you set up, Park Lane, and then a new opportunity came a-knocking. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, a kind of phone call to be like ATG, and I was like, oh, okay, the world's biggest theatre company. That's exciting. Had a few phone calls, and my husband was looking at me with tilted head like, you know, they're in London, right? And I'm like...
And we live in...
And we live in Dubai. And I'm like... Yeah, I know. You know, they're in the West End, James. You know, they're like the holy grail of theatre. It's either that or Broadway, my love. Yes. And James is not a theatre or event man, so he's just looking at me like I'm insane. Then this wonderful company said, do you think you might want to come run the Savoy? And I was like, the Savoy? Of all of them? Like, that's the holy grail. So I put the phone down and turned to James and said, they've offered me the Savoy. And he was like, that's not a thing. Let's go and see your mum and dad. They'll tell you you're insane. And I was like, okay. Having never lived apart from my parents in my life. So we dutifully trotted round to mum and dad's house, who both went, the Savoy? You must go. 5 weeks later, I landed in London. And that was just coming up to 3 years ago now. But yeah, it was, the Savoy. It's kind of one of those moments that it was a bit surreal, really, because you're like, well, the actual Savoy, or is there a different Savoy that I don't know about that isn't literally on the Strand in the West End, you know?
Now, I'm going to ask you, forgive me, but did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome?
Yeah, all the time, still do. Oh, and here, yes, I was like, okay. Yeah, I spent the first kind of 3 months going, what have you done? Are you insane? Do you really think you can run this 1,200 seats, absolutely glorious heart of the West End with some of the biggest shows ever? And at the time when I landed, we had Pretty Woman, and Pretty Woman was short-lived in my time. We only had 5 months of her. And then the next thing, I didn't have time for the imposter syndrome anymore because we were having a show delivered to us called A Little Life with James Norton of Happy Valley fame. And it was an incredibly difficult show, 4 hours. He's not clothed for the show. It has a lot of trigger warnings. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult to watch. Wow. So we then launched into, caring for my team, which was all of them had to be mental health first trained. Some of us had to be Samaritan trained. Some of us had to be sexual trauma response trained. And it was just this whole new world of bringing in a new show, getting that show ready, and all of the elements that there is to running a theatre in the West End that is slightly different to the UAE. And at that point, we kind of kicked into A Little Life, and then we started knowing that after that was coming Sunset Boulevard with Jamie Lloyd and Nicole Scherzinger, and then we knew that we were having Plaza Suite with Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick, and we at that point you're just 100 miles an hour. Yeah. But I also think that my nickname here is Maverick because a lot of people in ATG, one of the great things about it is that there's 10 in the West End. We sit as a solid 10 brothers and sisters. So there's another, I call us the big 10, and there's another 9 of me, which has been an incredible thing. But most of those people have worked for ATG for 14 and 15 years. So, I'm brand spanking new. They were all absolutely amazing, totally new. Yep. But what that brought with it was some of they call them the Dubai ways. They're like
out of the box thinking.
Yeah, just a tad. So sometimes I go, why do we do that? And the answer is sometimes, we just always have. And I think that Dubai way of thinking that I learned in my time there, which is there's nothing you can't achieve. There's nothing you can't do. Just look at it differently has really helped. We've gone, right, well, we're not doing that. We'll do it this way. And people look at you like you're absolutely insane. For A Little Life, for example, underneath the stage, because it was a play, we had this big empty orchestra pit, gigantic, the size of our stage. And it was just sat there doing nothing. And one of the hardest things that we have in these old buildings is there's not a lot of front of house space. Right. So we just built a bar under the stage. And everybody thought I was insane. And my wonderful, I've got these two brilliant humans who work with me, Joe and Mike. Joe is my deputy general manager and Mike's my technical and building manager. And I said to Mike, he'd got on holiday and came back. And I said, we're going to build a bar under the stage. And he was like, no, we are not. And I was like, no, we are not. You are. I've had an idea. And as Mike always says, A, don't go on holiday because you'll come back and she'll have gone rogue. B, when she says, I've had an idea, run. So we did. We built this incredible bar under the stage that became this amazing piece of history that everybody has loved so very much. And we've rebuilt it twice. But yeah, so I think in terms of the imposter syndrome, it was short-lived in the beginning because it was this overwhelming. This is the West End, Maxine. This is the big time.
It's a funny thing, imposter syndrome, isn't it? I think we all suffer from it. I know I have, and in my career over the last 30 years in television and media, and even now I sometimes think, really, am I the right person to be doing this? But I think there's two things going on there. I think in relation to your situation as well is I think there's the doubt that then evaporates when you get put in situations that you don't, as you said, you don't have time to react to. 100%. It just comes naturally. Actually, it's not naturally. It's come from experience, isn't it? And I think then when you sit back later, you go, actually, no, I do know what I'm doing. And I think secondly, there's an amount of internal pressure that you put on yourself, I think, and particularly perhaps in your role where, okay, Dubai, yes, it's in the headlines. Yes, it's in a lot of the newspapers around the world. But, if something really goes wrong there, you're a little bit shielded. Mm-hmm. The West End, you're not.
Nope, you are not. This is, you are fair game. And it's, it's a wide open thing. And, you are, differently to obviously there where you've got a short run and you know what you're doing. Here we are open 7 days a week, and there's 1,200 people come through the doors, sometimes twice a day. And you've got, you've got your own team, and then there's an entire cast and an entire production to look after. And there's so much to think about. There's just elements of it that is never ending. I'm a terrible workaholic, as you know, but I'm in here at 8:15, and some days at 11 p.m. I'm like, Maxine, go home. Yeah. Because it can become all consuming because there's so much happening. But I do think it is that, and there are moments where you get to sit and look at. I know I have, and I don't know whether that's age, experience, or this building, or being in the West End, or having grown and developed. But there are moments where I've kind of just sat down and gone, wow, this team that you support have done this. And I've looked at some of the stuff that during A Little Life, there's seats on stage, so you can sit as part of the set, but you're not. Your phone goes in a locked bag, and obviously my team took my radio away from me, which they like to do a lot when there's an event on, in case I get involved. And I remember sitting there. You have to go on stage first, and I'm sat down, and I watched my team fill 1,200 seats of the theatre. I watched them all walking around, getting people in, then that, giving clearance, checking glasses, doing everything. And then the lights went down and this play happened. And at the end of it, you had to stay on stage, and then I watched them get everybody out and do everything. And to be able to watch them from that different point of view, that was a real, look at them. That was immaculate. And that was a real moment for me to go, You've been here 7 months, 8 months, Maxine, in the West End, and that was a really successful thing that just happened, and you were a part of it. That's really good.
Now, I want to ask you about what you've learned from your time here in the 3 years, because obviously it must have been an absolutely fantastic opportunity to gain a wealth of experience that perhaps you couldn't have got anywhere else in the world. Before that, I also want to just touch on now, you're married. Your partner, James, lives in Dubai. You live here. How have you managed that?
It's very hard. It's a lot of Zooms. Basically, we said a year because I'd never lived or worked in the UK. And again, imposter syndrome. Could I actually run a West End theatre, or was I going to get sent home in 4 months being like, oh, you were what we thought you were. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Which,
thankfully that hasn't happened.
It didn't, that lives with you, the what if I can't do it? Yeah. What if they go, this was a big mistake. You're the wrong Maxine, off you pop. And so then at the end of that year, he got offered a job that meant he needed to stay. And they fly and everything moves at speed. So the next thing we knew, we were 2 years in. But it is a lot of, we're going to eat dinner together on Zoom. It is, I'm walking to a meeting. I've got 30 seconds. I'm going to call you in every available moment. It is not leaving it longer than 3 months for one of us to fly either way. It is constant communication, and it is a rock solid marriage, and a man who went, this is your dream, and I'm going to do the hard bit, which is stay here. But actually, on reflection and talking about it, I don't think that what we've achieved in this building in the last kind of 2.5, 3 years would have been possible if he had been here in the nicest possible way.
No,
I have been able to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to get to where we wanted to be with this wonderful venue. And I would have been torn if he was at home waiting for me.
Yeah. So a huge learning curve personally, and then obviously professionally. If there was one thing that you could take away from your time here so far at the Savoy, what would it be?
I think it would be a very lovely producer who has become a friend said to me that the experience in the Savoy is something that he's not experienced in a very, very long time. That you walk through the front doors and it's glamour again, and the service is exceptional. My team are like ninjas. And he said it reminds him of what theatre used to be, that you dress up, you go and you have an experience, and it's not just what's on the stage, it's the entire bit from the beginning right to the end. And that is now one of the reasons he's producing the show that we're producing tonight, because he wants to work with a team that are as exceptional as mine. And watching people have that experience of old school glamour theatre, and knowing that my team have done that, and there's we're not fans of the old jogging bottoms in the Savoy. We like some glamour in our world, and
you need to dress up.
That's the
dress for the occasion.
Dress for the occasion, and I think it's the Savoy. And I love seeing that, and I love hearing him tell people that there's no theatre quite like this for the experience. And there's everyone who comes here and leaves, that's what they say to me. They all say, your team are exceptional and I've had a great experience. And it's not just about what's on the stage. And that, for me, is something I will always take away, that coming to the Savoy is not just to see whatever is on that stage. It's coming to have an experience. And I think that will probably one day be my legacy as well.
Now, before we wrap up, we've been talking about big numbers and everything and music. I'm a music fan. My vinyl collection is growing once again. What do you listen to? What do you like to unwind to? We've been asking all our guests this, so.
I'm pretty eclectic, and it really depends on the day, because I'm either listening to a musical number, because I do love the musicals. You have to, otherwise you'd go insane. Or the big numbers is usually I go to Rob Thomas for solace.
Okay.
I'm a huge Rob Thomas fan. That man could sing the phone book at me. And have never seen him live. Of all of the hundreds of thousands of people that I have seen live, he still remains elusive to me. But I will. One day I will go to America and watch that man sing.
Brilliant. Maxine, I've had a fantastic time sitting here recording the podcast today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Event News DXB was presented by myself, Ian Carless. The studio engineer and editor was Roy DeMonte. The executive producer was myself and Joe Morrison. And this podcast is a co-production between Warehouse 4 and W4 Podcast Studio, Dubai. And if you haven't done so already, please do click that follow or subscribe button. See you next time.
Event News DXB.